Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Intelligent DICOM Prefetch, Enabling Clinical Priorities. DataFirst is glad to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your day to participate in our educational webinar. All of our attendees will be in listen-only mode, but I do want to make sure that you can see the screen and you can hear us. So if you get a free moment, can you please raise your hand if you can see the agenda for the webinar? Thank you very much, Brian, Chris, Anita. Thank you very much for raising your hand. That also leads us into the next item, which is we want to make this as interactive as we possibly can. So you can ask questions in the Q&A. We will take time during and after the webinar to try to address your questions. If we do not address them live, we will make sure that we follow up. You can also leave us a message in the chat, and we will be interacting with you in that capacity as well. So with no further ado, I'd like to pass things over to the CEO of DataFirst, Mr. Bo Jones. Bo, take it away.
Hey, Dennis, thanks so much for setting this up. I know a lot of work goes into these things, so very much appreciate that. So, hey, as we continue in our educational series around our Silverback Workflow Engine, last month was our first one. This is our second one in the series. I wanted to extend a warm welcome to everybody that has taken some time out of their day to attend. My goal is that over the next 45 minutes, we'll allow for a meaningful and rich discussion around several interoperability challenges that we see facing imaging environments today. So in last month's series, we offered a broad introduction to the services, functions, and features of Silverback. And interestingly, following that presentation, we received a significant amount of interest in certain features, but more specifically, how our Silverback platform manages prefetching algorithms and processes. So for today's agenda, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, not go quite as broad, but we're going to go deeper into Silverback as we focus specifically on the intelligent prefetching capabilities of our engine and how we think we can add value to any imaging enterprise that's out there where you might have a challenge around prefetch. We call it prefetch, but we'll also throw the word intelligent in front of it because we believe that we've got some technologies that help make that prefetching smarter than your typical prefetching. And to help me out today, I've asked our Chief Operating Officer, Bob Masculiak, to join us because we're going to be diving into a couple of deep topics that he's got specific knowledge in. So Bob, welcome to our discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Bo. Glad to be here. So with that, I'll move into the presentation here. We've offered just a traditional definition of what prefetch means, the automated mechanism to find and deliver relevant prior studies of the patient from an imaging archive, PACS, VNA, et cetera, for diagnostic comparison. So essentially pulling them really from any storage methodology and making those available to the end user on any viewing solution. We're going to talk for a minute about some of the market drivers in prefetch. We're seeing the need for this grow, and there are some clear reasons that we want to point to here. So today's imaging services demand more, and I think what we mean by that is we're seeing larger challenges for having image data available. One of them that was unexpected was the onset of COVID. You know, we had a lot of end user customers who were working from home. And the ability to move exams around and get them to the right place just in time is a significant driver in using prefetch. Another is cloud retrieval, as we're seeing many organizations move their entire data infrastructure to the cloud. What we know is we can use prefetch to help support a good balance of cloud storage and retrieval with a reasonable on-prem for those various standalone viewing solutions that you might have. So we can go out and retrieve those cloud-based exams and serve those up to your various ology style viewing solutions. One of the largest drivers is acquisitions. You know, we're seeing an unprecedented amount of roll-ups to enterprise health delivery systems. And one of the big challenges in all those acquisitions and consolidations are getting your prior exams online and viewable. And during those, you'll see radiology groups molding or cardiology groups melding together. And how do we get those exams in front of them before they've perhaps been migrated or ingested into a larger enterprise system? Prefetch is a great tool for handling that. And technology. We're seeing just changes in technology. I mentioned earlier, over the past 10 years, we've seen study size grow immensely, meaning having all of that stuff available, on all of your priors available on reasonably priced storage is a technology challenge. But one of the big things we're seeing is AI. More and more, we're seeing customers deploy AI solutions for either statistical reasons or actually to help in the diagnostic process. And what we're finding is the AI engines need the relevant priors so that they can produce the same output that they're producing for the newly acquired exams. And then finally, custom workflows. DataFirst we were at first a migration company. And one of the things we've learned is nearly every location has a custom workflow. So having a prefetch engine that's flexible and can support the unique workflows of an organization is really important to getting those relevant priors where they need to be when they need to be. All right, so anybody who's tried to do prefetch knows that it's easier said than done. Especially given some of the challenges we talked about on the last slide, and we're going to call some of those out. Proprietary formats, right? While we all know DICOM, we also know that not everybody, but many manufacturers deploy that differently, or they'll have their own proprietary storage. So moving those exams from those various proprietary storage solutions is a challenge. Large data sets. Again, we touched on the exams just getting bigger. In intelligent prefetch, we can handle that by just giving thick slice data if that's appropriate to end users, archiving the thin slice data somewhere else, et cetera. Siloed systems. What we see a lot is end user physicians will want the whole clinical picture. However, what you might have is your cardiology data stored in one PACS system and your radiology data stored in another. So we can put our Silverback engine in front of both of those solutions simultaneously and be able to serve up an entire clinical picture to downstream viewing solution, or even some type of post-processing solution if that's where the target is. Corrupt, malformed, or disparate demographics. I think that one of the biggest ones that we see, one of the biggest challenges out there are disparate demographics. Again, we talked about consolidation, and it's not unusual for us to deploy our engine in front of multiple legacy PACS systems in order to serve up relevant prior comparisons to a new enterprise solution before their migration is complete. So, I think one of the important features inside any prefetch engine is the ability to update demographic data using inbound crosswalks with with the new patient ID, so that you're moving those studies and allowing those to be commonly viewed, even though they may be coming from 5, 6, 7 different source systems. And then finally, changing resources and workflows. What we see often is throughout the course of a given day, there may be 3 or 4 different radiology groups reading, or there may be subspecialty groups that are reading certain exams. And then come nighttime, we have folks employing a Nighthawk solution. Well, we can use our prefetch engine to make sure that in the same way that the on-prem radiologists would have access to those priors, the same would be true for those Nighthawk viewing solutions. right, Bo, do you want to speak to the total solution here?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, in addition to the feature that we're going to talk about today, Prefetch, Silverback is a much more comprehensive platform than just a Prefetch solution. If you go to our website, we've segmented our product, but many, many other services and many other features of which we discussed in our last webinar broadly, that as an integrated singular solution add, I think, significant value to any imaging enterprise, whether it's anonymization of a study, whether it's SCO to VTO conversion, whether it's migration needs. Bob mentioned consolidation, right? That's a huge requirement as you're bringing images in from perhaps an acquired site or from a physician's office into the mothership, or the ability to tag management or store to the cloud. So there's just a host of other kind of, call it a Swiss Army knife for imaging services that can be plugged into the kind of central component of your imaging enterprise, even allowing you to alert when something fails outside of an established criteria. And you're getting either a web alert or on an iPhone or Android or whatever device you're using that alerts you that there's something wrong. So it's really a comprehensive solution. But I think what makes us quite unique in the fact that we've got 45 engineers that work for us during our migration efforts, we have access to those same intelligent resources. They become partners in engaging with you both to help set up. And it really is our process where we analyze and we design, we deploy and we test, and we deploy and deliver a solution that we hope exceeds your needs and abilities. So it's really the platform, people, and process, what I often refer to as the 3 Ps that really make the solution quite a comprehensive deliverable for your facility.
All right, so we're gonna now talk about triggers. There are any number of triggers that would cause prefetch activity to happen. We're going to touch on a few here. There's certainly more out there, but one of the common ones is modality worklist based triggering. So much like your modalities, our Silverback engine will query your worklist provider, be it your EMR, your RIS, or whatever ordering system you have in place. We can take the content of that modality worklist query result and carve out the information that we need in order to then interrogate the source pack system for relevant priors, and then move those relevant priors along based on the results of that query result of the prior. So for example, we'll query the modality worklist, we'll carve out the patient ID, some other relevant patient demographics, birth dates, et cetera. And then we'll look for associated priors that would match the inbound new study. So for example, if it's a brain of the MRI, we'll look for what brain associated studies would be there. We go ahead and move those down the road to whatever the viewing solution is. It could be to I say viewing solution, but could be to a target PACS that has standard viewing, or a particular workstation. Those moves are all rules based, so it would really just we could deliver those priors to multiple destinations at one time. All right, one of the other common triggers that we see, and one that is probably more ideal than modality worklist, are HL7 based triggers. And what we do with Silverback is we can receive an inbound ORU, a scheduled message, and parse out the data from that message, be it procedure code, procedure description, and again, the relevant demographics. We would then query your source pack system dynamically for any related priors that would be relevant for that new inbound study from a comparison perspective. We then say the right side of the equation is really the same. We could move those to any number of targets that would be required to have those. One of the things we can also do here, we talked a little bit about the challenge of consolidating multiple systems into one. If we have crosswalks available, we can put those in place in Silverback. So what would happen is if say your new your HL7 messages have a new patient ID reflecting a recent acquisition, yet all your legacy data is stored with prior patient ID. We have the ability to look backwards as long as we have that crosswalk in place to see, okay, if today the patient ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, and yesterday it was A, B, C, D, we have the ability to match those up, update that, and move those, update that to the new patient ID and move it downstream to whatever the viewing solution is. Again, why is HL7 advantageous perhaps over modality work list? It really has to do with when the modality work list entry hits. That's configurable in most cases, but what we often see is the modality work list entry isn't available until the patient's arrived in the department. And in many cases, that's a little late in the game to be able to actually serve up relevant priors, especially if it's a stroke or something, a little more acute. What we see is the order is usually one of the first things out. So if we can get that, much like the downstream modalities or PAC system, we can act on that faster. Even better with a scheduled message, it allows us to do some tricky things as far as holding those priors until such time that they're needed. Another way that we set prefetch up is oftentimes by doing direct database queries. So we'll set up a routine where we'll query EMR or risk system, whatever has the newly scheduled exams, and then we'll pull that list in, and we can do that based on a time of day. We can do it every couple minutes, whatever makes sense. So for example, if we can query tomorrow's schedule at midnight, and then we can act on pulling those relevant priors and routing them downstream to where they need to go in advance of that need. And again, our diagrams on all of these say source packs, but the reality is it could be any number of solutions that are or archives that are handling that. It can be a VNA, it can be cloud-based archive, whatever it is. We can query all of those simultaneously to get the relevant prior. So again, if you've got 5 or 6 or 7 different PAC systems, we can query them all and send the relevant priors downstream. At this point, we're going to talk a little bit about some workflow examples that we've seen. And, in this particular case, the problem that we were asked to solve is we have some downstream viewing solutions that had some limited capacity. In particular, this was a mammography workflow where any of you who do mammography work know that oftentimes the memos are scheduled a year, 6 months in advance. And what was happening in this particular case is the exams were being moved at the time that the exam was scheduled and being sent to a viewing solution that had a finite amount of local storage. So they would just FIFO off long before that patient actually came. So what we put in place here is we receive an inbound HL7 scheduled message, and we parse out the relevant information to identify those priors. And one of the bits of information that we have there is the scheduled date for the next exam. So what we do is we list all those priors in a staging table, and then that staging table is acted upon 24 to 48 hours before that next scheduled exam. It really just depends on what the customer wants. So for example, if you have a patient that has a mammogram scheduled for, December 1st of this year, and that's scheduled today, we'll go out, we'll grab all those relevant priors from an information perspective and stash that in a staging table. And then on the last day of November, we'll go out and we'll move those relevant priors downstream to the viewing solution, thereby making them available at the time that the new exam comes inbound, and then they'll fall off based on the normal FIFO there. So again, this is really helpful when you've got a limited amount of viewing. A limited amount of storage on your viewing solution. All right, the next one was kind of a unique solution we were asked. There was a group that was using a subspecialty radiology reading group to interpret their exams. What would happen is the exams were actually being performed, and then a decision was made whether or not those exams needed to go to this subspecialty reading group. So once that decision was made, an order was sent to our Silverback engine, and what we would do is we would go out and we interrogate the source PACS system for all of the things that would match the relevancy criteria to be considered a prior. But what we would also do, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of our drawing here, we check to make sure that those priors don't already exist on that subspecialty reading PACS. Anything that isn't there but is identified as a relevant prior, we then send a message over to the source PACS system to directly move it over to the subspecialty viewing. So in the prior cases, we were actually moving the exams through the Silverback engine, meaning the files were actually moving. In this case, we're just sending an order out an order is the wrong word. We're sending a CMove request to the source PACS system to tell it to move those relevant priors down to that viewing solution. Again, at this point, we've already checked. We know that they don't exist there, so we're not going to send in duplicates. And again, so this was kind of a post fetch, a little bit of a different workflow, but certainly one that that fits and is part of the intelligent prefetch that we're talking about here. And one of the things I think that it's important to add here is it's when we're deploying a solution, it's really helpful to understand how can you tell what relevancy is. We can build relevancy tables using sort of some fuzzy logic matching and some industry standards. We can use body part examined. We can use a lot of things. There's some give and take in the beginning to determine what the appropriate matching criteria would be to determine what relevancy is. We could quite simply send everything, but that's just not practical in most cases, especially if you've got a guy who's got 100 exams. You don't want to send those all if he's in for a chest x-ray and the reason he was there before was 30 different orthopedic injuries is really not all that helpful. So we like to make sure that we build a nice relevancy table that fits the customer solution. All right, ad hoc prefetch. So in this case, this would be a scenario where the end user can use a workstation and log into our Silverback GUI, and they can request that a particular exam be prefetched and sent down a given route. They can do this either by dropping a single element, data element like patient ID, and then what we'll do is we'll serve up all of the relevant examples that would meet, and they could determine which needs to be sent down the road. So again, the end user loads whatever the relevant feature that they have. In most cases, it's patient ID, right? You put the patient ID in, you'll get a list back of all of the prior exams from the source system, and then they can select which of those should be moved. We see this in situations where perhaps there's a John Doe and at the last minute he or she gets identified, but now we need to get those exams over, and it's not going to happen fast enough if it goes through the normal ordering process. So this is a way to expedite the movement of a needed prior on an ad hoc basis. All right, so we're going to talk about some the SEO to BTO conversion here. So you might ask, why is this relevant in a discussion about prefetch? Well, what we found is there are some organizations that moved away from hologic viewing and opted not to perform a big conversion of their SEO data over to BTO. Instead, they do it on an as needed basis. So if a patient comes back, that they'll then at that time use our SEO to BTO converter to go ahead and convert those SEO instances into BTO instances. So where prefetch matters here is same situation. Any of the triggers could be deployed, whether it's modality work list, ad hoc prefetch, or HL7. We would go out and identify any of the legacy exams that had SEO instances, either by description, procedure code, whatever's available to us. We then move that exam into Silverback, and then Silverback runs that exam through the BTO conversion. So we go out and we look for the SOP classes and other relevant descriptors that identify those legacy SEO instances. We then convert those SEO instances over to BTO, assign them a distinct SOP class, but keep the study instance UID, and then we move that over to the target viewing system. This could be a simple loopback workflow where the PACS system sends us that exam in, and we loop it right back and send them just the new instances, and then they're available. But what we're demonstrating here is, whatever the target system could be. It could be that those BTO instances go both to the archive and to a viewing solution if you've got a separate MAMO viewing solution. So again, this is kind of a nice way. The other thing where this is helpful is in those scenarios where you've got customers bringing in CDs that haven't been converted. This is kind of nice. We've seen where, whatever the mechanism is to get an outside CD into your PACS environment, we could then go ahead and enable the same prefetch of those and pull those down and have that conversion take place. All right, so the workflow example that we're showing here is that the prior studies reside in the cloud. And why you see all those little disks up top there in the cloud is, what we know is there are various storage tiers in the cloud as well. So again, using any of the available triggers that we talked about, be it MWL or HL7, the sooner we know, we can go ahead and query whatever the front end of that cloud-based archive is. If it's DICOM or if it's AWS, we can, as long as we know about it, we can go and pull the AWS files directly into our Silverback engine. And the earlier we know, the faster we can move it up from slower tiers of storage and pull it down, thereby populating our whatever the customer's on-prem viewing solution is. So again, one of the challenges we see with cloud-based stuff where you're not doing direct viewing in the cloud, but just archiving, is making sure that the on-premise is primed with the relevant exams that are needed to get through the interpretations. All right, so one of the other solutions that we put in place are situations where a customer was an early adopter of VNAs and has a desire to either change their PACS system or use specialty viewing solutions for particular exam types. So what we do is, if a customer's got a fully populated VNA, we discover all the studies that exist on that VNA, and we can do those discoveries dynamically, and we do regular queries of it. Again, whatever trigger is driving the prefetch, be it HL7 or any of the others, we go and we identify what exams would be useful as a relevant prior, and go ahead and we pull those from the VNA and distribute those downstream to whatever the PACS or target viewing solution is. All right, so I think we've worked our way through our examples, and I think we're at a point now. We can take some questions, or if there's anything you want us to cover in more detail, we'd go ahead and do that.
Sounds, sounds good, Bob. And just as a reminder, if you would like to have a question of yours addressed, go ahead and put it into the Q&A or also into the chat. We'll do our best to answer your question live. And if we do not get to you today, then we'll make sure that we do have somebody from our organization follow up with you. Bob, we're going to start with, when an image or study is routed through Silverback, is it saved on the Silverback storage after it is transmitted?
Yeah, so the answer to that is it's up to the end user and how they want that. That's a configurable solution there. We cache everything, and upon setup, we determine how long that cache is, right? There's no limit. Technically, the only limit is the amount of storage that's allocated for holding those exams. So the answer is absolutely yes, but that's a completely configurable solution.
Next question is, what HL7 engine are you using?
So we have our own. We've developed our own listener and our own sender, and that integrates with tables in Silverback for the purposes of moving those exams. So yeah, so we use our own.
Let's see here. Question comes in. I've been caching studies in a VNA the last few years. I'd like to take advantage of some front-end specialty viewing stations. How could your solution help me in this initiative?
Yeah, so that's kind of one of the examples that we talked about just a little bit earlier is, we can distribute based on prefetch exams really anywhere. So if it's some sort of post-processing that needs to occur, or as was mentioned here, a particular, say it's a particular cardiology viewing solution, they've stored their cardiology studies there, we can pull all those priors down and make those available for comparison on that specialty viewing environment.
Chris asks, can you query against multiple sources with prioritization too?
So yes, we can. So I'd say that's a little bit of a customization, but yeah, we certainly can. We can identify the priority of the individual sources, and we actually have this going on at a particular location, and the thought was, let's find the one that's closest, and it was a kind of a geographical thing that we prioritized the source archives based on where they sat relative to the solution that needed them.
Question. We've inherited several standalone PACS systems and waiting to roll them up. Can you implement this solution as a stopgap before we get them integrated?
Yeah, so a little bit about DataFirst. I think I mentioned this earlier. DataFirst was started primarily as a migration company. Well, we were an archive company and then moved heavily into the migration business. And we initially took on Prefetch as a migration company. And what I mean by that is, I don't think we fully appreciated the need for intelligent prefetch. What we would do is we'd say, hey, let's pull everything and send it. In the case that's been spoken of here, we absolutely can make exams available. So let's just say you've got a migration going on from, and you've got 2 years worth of data, 3 years worth of data across. Well, what we see is most of the time the radiologists will agree that that's okay until such time that they realize that they only have 2 years worth of priors, and then they want everything. So what we can do with intelligent prefetch here is pull the relevant exams and regardless of date. So we can go back and say, okay, if it's a 10-year-old study, but it fits the particular need, we move those forward, essentially moving them up in the migration queue to make those move right away. I think that answers that question. I hope that it does.
I think it does. Brian, we really appreciate your questions. We will end up tabling a handful of these, but really appreciate your interest here. Brian asked a question, is your product modular? Can I scale it by putting certain roles on dedicated VMs?
So as we speak today, no. It's not a modular solution in that way where you can take a piece of the solution and put it on multiple VMs. That being said, we can deploy multiple instances of the application and have it reference a single database and assign the jobs that you need to those various VMs. So we kind of get there, but it's not modular not truly modular. We can just sort of install part of it, right?
But we do, by way of limiting functionality to those particular services in the way that we've segmented our product. So our product, basically, think of it as small, medium, and large, what we refer to as Silverback U, which is the smallest, directly competitive with kind of your basic router. Silverback Enterprise, which is everything that we discussed today, and then Silverback Pro, which effectively is everything we've discussed today with the ability to do your own core migrations. This, by the way, is the same exact tool that our engineers are using. And as such, we can deploy and just simply limit functionality when you don't have access to certain functions.
Great. We've got some time. Again, if you have a question, you could go ahead and register it in to the chat and or into the Q&A. And we will also make sure that we do get back with you for any questions that were not answered live. How is your solution licensed?
Oh, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so following up on the last comment I just mentioned, we recognize that there is in the industry a need for a basic router. Low cost, but high functioning based on our core Silverback technology. So we have a router to meet that lower end market with high function. We have what we call an enterprise version, which is a much more comprehensive, involves high availability, failover, a variety of other functions, right, that are going to add value beyond your basic router. And those are cost tiered. So cheap is the Silverback View, Enterprise is a more expensive version, and then Pro is the only one that has a variable component, which is only volume driven because of the need to do migrations. So when we're proposing a solution for a customer and they say, hey, migrations are going to be important for us, we would just ask what their anticipated annual volume of migration would be and potentially how many sites. I've got 50 sites, and let's say that we'll do 1 million studies a year. And we would just license that tool to handle that volume.
Great. I think that just about does. Give me one moment, please. Does your solution, does it have work lists where users can review inbound studies and manually perform reconciliation to patient records in PACS?
So that is coming. We handle a lot of that now with source of truth, and which is kind of a document. So, however, in the very near future, we will have that the ability to view that list and manually reconcile those studies. It's in development as we speak today.
I see that we've answered. Brad's answered is on the line as well. Brad's answering a number of questions in the chat that I guess we wouldn't necessarily need to discuss live. So at this point, I believe that we're coming up on the end of our time. Bo, I'll give you some closing thoughts, And thank you everybody for participating in our webinar, but I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, and then we can go ahead and end our webinar.
Yeah, thanks
everyone.
Spencer. And thanks, Bob, for chiming in on these technical attributes. So this is a comprehensive product. We think there's value both in the services that we deliver, as well as the GUI, the way that you interact. I think one of Brian's question is can a non-DataFirst engineer run this thing? And the answer is absolutely. We've built it that way so that regular PACS administrators, who are the backbone of an imaging enterprise, can configure this, with also knowing that they have the value of our entire organization, likely have the cell phone of an engineer to bring us on and to collaboratively help you solve a problem. It's one thing to have the tool, and many of that is customized. You can kind of run through a pick list based on what you want to do. But there may be, as Bob said, there may be a snowflake, a unique attribute that you say, wow, how would we solve this particular problem? And working with our engineers, I can pretty much guarantee you we can figure out a way to configure the system to do exactly what it is that you need. And again, much of this is born out of the high demands that we find doing 350 migration projects a year. And we're serving all OEMs, direct customers, so we get to see a lot. We get to see a lot from sources, we get to see a lot from VNAs, see a lot from cloud, see a lot from targets. And there is some interoperability challenge that exists in that ecosystem. We fit to fill that gap for our clients and customers. So I would encourage you, if there's something here that you saw that was interesting, to set up a demo with us. Interestingly, we all within the organization of DataFirst have been recipients of software. And the last thing we want to do is overpromise something. So we are in an environment where we will deploy it for you for free. We'll allow you to tire kick it for a period of time, kind of set up a mini scope, proof of concept, and let you see what it's like to use the tool, to deploy the tool, to configure the tool, to work with our engineers. I mean, this is a collaborative process. I think the word partnership gets beat up in this industry. Our goal is to kind of define and show you what that means to DataFirst. Customers who use our product love our product. They love our people more. And as I said before, people, process, and product are really the three things that we bring to bear. We don't just simply develop a solution or a platform and throw it over the fence and just say, have you figured it out? We are working side by side to make sure that you deploy it in the manner in which you desire to deploy it. So I would encourage you to set up a time with one of our engineers, Bob or myself, to do a 30-minute demo where you get to see it. We've got a test database that we've got attached to it. And if there's interest as a result of seeing that presentation, then let us download it into your environment. You can download it from an OBA. We give you the specifications. We can set it up and you can actually see it in your environment, solving real problems. If we don't convince you that we're the best solution, we'll turn the software off and you can go about your business. Won't hear about us again.
Thank you, Bo. I'd like to remind everybody that in the chat, I just posted the link to take us up on the free trial. Once again, thank you for attending today's webinar. Be on the lookout for future educational webinars from DataFirst. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This concludes our webinar. We will make it available on demand on our website, and we'll notify you as soon as possible. Thank you again.
All the best.